I really didn't know a lot about what your group was about tonight. And so I'm kind of fascinated learning more about your group and the beauty of God, of providing just the right thing for just the right evening. And so I have an artist that she's passed away, but she's one of my very favorite artists to look at and to study and to consider how she lived her life. And her name is Elizabeth Layton. She lived in Kansas, and I'm going to show you a picture of her. This is Elizabeth Layton. I don't know if you can all see her okay, but she was raised in a very small town in Kansas. Her father owned the local newspaper, and her mother wrote the gossip column for the newspaper. And so she lived in that little, have you guys, anybody grew up in a small fishbowl?
Kansas, what town was it?
I'm not sure exactly what town she lived in.
That's all right.
I'll look at that here in a little bit and find out. But just that feeling of growing up with all those eyes watching you. So everything she did in her life, her mother wrote it in the paper, in the gossip column. Her sister ended up going to Stanford. Her brother ended up going to the Naval Academy. And she ended up dropping out of college and marrying an alcoholic.
Oh.
So, and her mother's writing about this. She's cloaking it a little bit in the paper. She's not outright saying that's what's happening, but in that small of a town, people know how to read between the lines and know that's what's going on. So she really struggled with that when she was young. She ended up getting a divorce, something very, very scandalous back in that era. She knew back then, she remembered one of her favorite authors. When he got a divorce, the town pulled all of his books off the library shelves. So she knew how scandalous that was. She had 5 children, and in her later years, one of her children died. And when that son died, that's when she turned to art to find her way through that. Before she found the paintings, and I'm going to show you what she did, she had gone through 13 shock therapy treatments in Kansas City. She was diagnosed as manic depressive. She had come back and when her father died, ran the newspaper. And so there's so many women in the room, and you're probably working women. You guys know the pressure of single mother, working, raising those kids, feeling unhappy, feeling embarrassed, feeling uncertain about your whole life. So she really went through dark, dark, dark years. When she was 68 years old, she was still struggling with depression. And her sister was taking a painting class in California. And said, you need to go paint. You need to find something to do. So I want you to go take a drawing class, which she did. And in that class, she learned contour line drawing. This is contour line drawing. And I'm going to demonstrate it to you here in a minute. But it's a really interesting, fun way to draw that's pretty easy, actually. Anybody can do it. Is there anybody in this room that can't do contour line drawing? No? Everybody can do it. I promise you, you can. But I think it's so interesting to look at the evolution of her work. So this is one of her earlier works. It's called Fear. And it's a picture of Elizabeth hiding in the closet. You can see all her medication bottles poured out. She was on lots of medication for depression and high blood pressure and all those sorts of things. If you'll notice in the picture, her closet's empty. She had given away everything except for 2 outfits because she didn't feel worthy of her clothes. She thought she just wasn't worth it. She writes that it wasn't so much that she wanted to die, but she didn't have anything to live for. So, pretty powerful piece just to look at it. All it is colored pencil and paper. It's not even a painting, but we certainly get the emotion from it and the feelings that she had. That's just that extreme depression. She did eventually remarry a man that was very, very supportive. And through this process of contour line drawing, so she went and just took a class at the university learned contour line drawing, came home, sat at her kitchen table with nothing but just plain old piece of paper, some colored pencils, and a mirror, and started looking at herself and working through this technique of drawing. And by doing that, she felt like every time she did these drawings, that those emotions were left on the paper. She never intended for anyone to see the drawings, and so she would work on them, and that stuff would get left in there, and she'd stick it under the bed. And then she'd do another one, and she'd stick it under the bed. In a span of 15 years, she did 1,200 of these drawings, mostly of herself. And through that process, she feels like, she says, she cured herself of her depression. And so, this one of fear, wrestling with those feelings, she put it on the page, put it under the bed, let that go. And there's lots of techniques to do that, and I imagine you probably talk about that some, but you can do that through journaling, you can do it through painting, you can do it through music, but anything that you're saying, I have all of this, and I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm going to let that go. So she ended up, I'm going to show you one of her later works. This is called Skipping Down Christo's Walkway. Christo's a famous artist, and this was about when he came to Kansas City, and she went to see his work. He's the guy that wraps buildings in fabric. I don't know if you've ever seen it. But look how happy she is. This is several years later, and these were the emotions she was feeling at this time. This is actually owned by the Art Museum in Kansas City. She never sold any of her paintings. She felt like that they were just her form of therapy, and that they were a gift to her that kind of transformed her and healed her, essentially. And so since she felt like that was a gift that was given to her, she never wanted to profit from it. And so she didn't sell any of the works. In fact, as I said, she didn't show the work for a long time. I think both of these are very interesting. This one's called Void, and this one's about her own death. I think Void's pretty self-explanatory of that feeling of extreme depression and darkness and being surrounded with that. And this is her pushing up daisies. This is her after she died. And so, although it sounds a little serious, and we're not doing this in the studio on a daily basis, but being willing to kind of go that far in and look at the scope of your whole life and what that would mean after you're gone, and it's pretty powerful to be willing to go that far. It's brave. It's one of the bravest things I think there is. And so many times when people hear, oh, you're an artist, or you teach art lessons, and isn't that cute, and I'm sure that's really fun. It's actually, it is fun, but it's also very risky, and takes a lot of courage to be willing to go in and do some of those things. So I'll leave these books up here so you can look, because she's a really fascinating woman. She, a man just kind of stumbled upon her, a newspaper reporter, and when he found her, he's the one that got the drawings out of the bed and started really working on it all and trying to make her famous. So she's really not famous. There's 2 books about her, but she's really not famous. Not very many people know who she is, but the people that do have been so moved by her work. So this one's kind of fun. You guys will enjoy it. If I can find a bigger picture of it, I'm going to show you. For what Tammy is, Dr. Tammy's up to, you're going to love this. Okay. She was about 5'2", and she weighed about 200 pounds, and so she struggled with some of that. And on this page, this painting is called Without Relish But With Gusto. And so it's so much fun to look at it, because she's got this little picture of a cow back here, and it says, "Holy cow, are you eating again?" And she's got her weekly diary of her food diary, and she's got a little thing that says, "Don't eat." But she's naked, she's on the scale. She has a magnifying glass looking at the numbers on the scale. And the magnifying glass is supposed to say the word diet but instead it says the word die. So she wasn't enjoying that. And pretty vulnerable to go in and draw herself like that. She also drew her husband, however she got good and ready to, and he was willing to pose for so many of those pictures that are really fun to go through and look at. But again, just taking that raw look at herself. You can get up closer and look at it some more. Let me see if there was one more I was going to show you. I love this one too because I don't like to cook. And this one's called Thanksgiving. And about it she writes, I hate to cook. So this is my Thanksgiving because we have Kentucky Fried Chicken and Oreo cookies. And I didn't have to work at all. I have cooked I don't know how many family dinners. I've given up. So the turkey is outside there strutting because he didn't get killed. See, it's better for everybody. So she had a good sense of humor about what she was doing too.
Is she still alive?
She's not. She died at 83 from a stroke. She was still painting after she had gone blind in one eye because she'd had a stroke in that eye. No, she'd had a retina problem in that eye. But she kept working anyway. So she only had about 15 years worth of art that she actually did because she started so late in life. But this technique that she learned, it's called contour line drawing, and it's a really fun way to start a painting, and I thought I would just kind of show you how to do it tonight. It's something that you can go home and with a Sharpie, a piece of paper, a pencil, a colored pencil, you can do it. So a lot of times people think with art that you have to have the right paints, and I don't know what kind of paint to buy, and I need to buy watercolors, and I don't know how to use them, and maybe I'll buy acrylics, but I don't really know how to use that. And so we create all of these obstacles for ourselves. But I can't afford that right now. I don't have the time for that. I can't buy those things. You can. I have this same artist that I brought her work tonight. In the last month, she did a drawing on a piece of newspaper that was left over. And it sold. It sold right away. But she did a piece of charcoal on newspaper, so you can work on anything. But contour line drawing is something that was, it's called contour line. And you can Google this, and you'll see, I imagine that you could find YouTube videos on this. It's a pretty well-known form of drawing. And it's a great way to just kind of get your feet wet and just try something. There's a woman named Betty Edwards, if you are into books or want to Google. And she wrote a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain. Does anybody know what that might mean?
Left-handed.
Left-handed, that's one way to do it, yes. Does anybody know right, left brain, any of that stuff? Has anybody heard of that? The short version is the left side of our brain is going to process words and numbers and facts and to-do lists and logical ways to approach things. And the right side of our brain is intuitive, it's feeling, doesn't really use words to label things. It responds more just with feeling. Like when you listen to a piece of music and it's really upbeat and you start feeling really positive, all of a sudden, that's the right side of your brain responding to that. The left side of your brain would be doing more of the, let's see, analyzing it. So the left side of our brain, because of the way we live, we're trained to function on the left side of our brain. That we're going to do things logically, we're going to do them right, we're going to do them in order, we're going to think logically. So when people come into the studio and they start to draw, that left side of the brain is still on, it's still dominant. And so we might be doing a painting of a dog. And when they want to start working on the dog, they'll say to me, I need to get the eyes right. I want to get the ears. I think the ears are longer. I think the nose is bigger. And so they're using words, eyes, nose, ears. And for an artist, that's not really how we're thinking once we get into a painting. We're thinking more in terms of shapes and form. When I'm working on, like, and I'm going to draw my own face here in just a minute for you, but if I was drawing myself, I don't really want my brain saying that's an eye, and a pupil, and an eyelash, and an eyebrow, because if I do that, I'm going to come in and start doing my little symbols that I learned when I was 5 for eye, pupil, eyebrow, eyelashes, right? You know, and so we're not really interested in symbols anymore because we're older. But the contour line drawing is a way to trick your brain. Just like drawing with your left hand, that's another way to trick the brain. Drawing upside down is another method to trick your brain so that the left side of your brain says, I have no idea what to do with this. And it steps aside so that your creative, your intuitive, your feeling side can come forward. I feel the urge just to share with you something that one of my students was talking about today, because you did mention the left hand. And we did have a class on journaling about 2 weeks ago in the studio. And so journaling is that same thing. Does anybody here journal? You guys journal? So just that dumping. That's kind of the same thing of just getting that stuff out. It's actually the exact same thing. Contour line drawing, journaling, same thing, different approach. But what she came in and told me today, she said, you know, I've been journaling the last few weeks, and I've started doing this technique of writing the question to myself that I want to ask myself, and then I switch hands and I answer it by writing with my left hand. And I haven't done this, but she said, actually it's her, it's the same person. She said by doing that, the theory behind it is that when you write with your left hand, it's tapping into your deep-seated knowing, your intuition. And she said when she's done it, that like when you're writing with your right hand, it's blah, 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 and I felt this, and I thought that. And when she writes with her left hand, it's very short. It's like, there's the answer. It's very brief. And that she's startled by the answers that are coming forward working with her left hand. Sharon. Yeah.
I love that when we did that in the journaling class, because I thought one interesting thing that I learned in that was I asked my question, and I didn't do it with the other hand, but my answer was, the question was, why can't I have more serendipity in my life? Because it always feels good when you win the lottery or when someone shows up on your door that's just the right person. And when we had put those words up there, and about the words that I had in conjunction together, the other word was spontaneous. And spontaneous came in the next sentence, and what I realized when I was answering the question was, I don't get much serendipity because I'm not spontaneous enough to be out there to be exposed to the serendipity. So
Wow.
you have to really, get out there and experience life to get exposed to the serendipity. So.
Isn't it amazing, like, taking the time to do the journaling, you found out answers that you didn't know you knew,
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty vulnerable to tell you guys, but I don't care, I'm gonna tell you anyway. For mine, when I was journaling that particular day, and I journal every day pretty much, but the words that came up for me were love and freedom. And so I'm constantly wrestling between those two worlds. It's like I want connection, I want relationship, all that stuff. And so it was very interesting to see, asking myself some questions and then realizing that I had kind of conflicting goals with love and freedom. So if you don't journal, it sounds, does anybody not journal in here, or how do you guys don't journal?
I don't.
Try it.
At the time.
Try it. And here's I'm not teaching journaling tonight, I'm going to show you contour line drawing, but all you have to do is get a piece of paper, any old piece of paper, And a lot of the questions are, well, I don't want anybody to read what I wrote. Well, fine, burn it when you're done. Do whatever you want to when you're done with it. But the easiest way to start journaling is say, I'm going to write 3 pages and not getting up until 3 pages are full. Yeah. And that's it. And so you may be sitting there like, I'm bored. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know what to write. That's fine. Write that. I'm bored. I don't have anything else to say. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write. I don't know what to write 12 times if you need to, but just don't stop and fill up those 3 pages. And eventually you'll get bored writing, I don't know what to write. Something will come up. So, okay, contour line drawing. This is the exact same technique that Elizabeth Layton used to find her path. Contour line drawing is when you look at an object. So tonight I'm going to use a mirror, but it could be your purse or your shoe or anything like that. And as you look at that object, as much as possible, you don't look at your paper. You only look at the object. Don't pick your pen up. And the way I like to think about it is you pretend like you're an ant, like a little ant. And an ant can go anywhere it wants. So I'm going to work on my eyes for you tonight. But if I was an ant crawling across my face, it could go across my eyeball, it could go up across here, it could go to my eyebrow, it could go up in my hair, it could come back down. It wouldn't have to have any logic to where it was roaming and going. And so you're literally pretending like your vision, your eye, what you're looking at, and your hand almost like connected and doing just a little dance. So contour line drawing is not about creating perfect pictures. It's about seeing, connecting your mind with your eye so you learn to really see what's there. So, for example, I'm going to do my eye. And I can still see all of you.
Behave.
But, so if I'm looking at my eye, and I'm not going to look at this, okay? I'm only going to look here. I can stop and check in a little bit, but mostly I'm not going to look. So, I'm going to stop talking for a minute too while I do it. It's very hard for me to go over to my right side of the brain, which doesn't like words, and kind of just see, and at the same time to be talking. So if I stop talking, just that's what's going on over here. So I'm starting with this part of me. I'm not lifting up my pen. I'm checking in with myself once in a while of what I'm doing. Oh, there's big old lines sticking out there. That wasn't there last year. We might need to talk. So you see how I'm kind of roaming around? I'm not really trying to get it necessarily right. I'm looking. This line almost goes out and I can see some hair. I can see my ear even. So I have no intention of going up there, but that's where my eye went. So I just felt the shift. And when you do it, you'll feel it. Did you see me just go? That was when I just shifted over. And I don't know if any of you have done meditation. Anybody meditate at all? Mm-hmm. It's the same shift. It's so if you haven't done any of that, if you've gone for a long car ride and you're driving and you're driving and you're driving, and all of a sudden you think, uh-oh, I don't remember the last 5 miles. You know that feeling? That's exactly what it feels like. That's being on the right side of your brain. That's what meditators feel like. That's what artists feel like when they fall all the way into it. That's that same sensation that you've made that shift over to the right side of your brain. So is this perfect? Is this right? Is it accurate? No, not really. Is it interesting? Yeah, it's really interesting. And it was interesting even for me because I've done this before, but I haven't done it in about 3 years. And there really are new lines that I really wasn't aware were there. You know, it's like, oh, okay, that's I earned those, so I know exactly where they came from. So just kind of that random roaming around. My hair is messy tonight. Yeah. I kind of like it like that. But to work through and do the whole face, that's the exact technique that Elizabeth Layton was using. So when you look back at her pictures, can you see that roaming line? Just kind of searching, looking, almost like a bee or a butterfly, just dancing around, exploring. So basically this idea of contour line drawing, this whole method of drawing has absolutely nothing to do with creating, has nothing to do with the piece of paper at all. Nothing. The paper could get thrown in the trash when it's done. It has to do with looking and seeing and taking a real hard look at yourself and what you really look like, who you really are, especially if you start with your eyes and you have to stare at yourself in the mirror like that. That's not an easy thing to do. Have you done that?
I'm not.
It's
I'm excited though.
You've got to try it. You've got to try it. So
I'm drawn upside down, thanks to you though.
it works.
It
doesn't
does work.
It does work.
You can draw things you never knew you could draw upside down.
Absolutely. I had a new student in the studio the last 2 weeks, and her husband lives away. She's just quit her job. She's lost. She doesn't know what to do with herself. Go to the art studio. But she's never drawn. She doesn't know how to draw. So we started drawing, and she was doing it right side up, and she was in a great deal of agony trying to do this. I don't know how. I can't do it. And so finally we did. We just flipped it upside down. And when I say flip it upside down, that's what I mean. Like she took the picture. Let's see if I can find a picture. Well, here. She took the picture. She flipped it upside down, and then she drew it upside down. And by doing that, that left side of the brain is not calling these Christmas ornaments anymore. It's starting to just see shapes and form. And it works. You end up with a really nice drawing by doing that.